Did you know that Family Guy was actually dead and buried for 3 entire years? And that the show you're watching today only exists because of DVD sales and something called Adult Swim? If you think you know everything about the Griffin family, you're about to discover some mind-blowing secrets that will completely change how you see this animated masterpiece. What I'm about to tell you goes way deeper than just random trivia. We're talking about hidden connections to other shows, real-world controversies that almost destroyed careers, and creative decisions that were so controversial they had to be completely rewritten. Some of these facts are so bizarre that even die-hard fans have never heard them. Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Family Guy didn't just get canceled once, it got canceled twice. But here's where it gets really interesting. The first cancellation happened after just 2 seasons because Fox executives thought the humor was too edgy and the ratings weren't strong enough. Seth MacFarlane was devastated, but he had no idea that this cancellation would actually make the show more popular than it had ever been while it was on the air. Here's what happened during those dark years. Adult Swim picked up the reruns and started airing them late at night. Something magical occurred. The show found its true audience. College students and young adults were staying up late, discovering this irreverent animated comedy that pushed every boundary imaginable. The ratings on Adult Swim were phenomenal. Meanwhile, DVD sales were going through the roof. People weren't just buying the DVDs, they were buying multiple copies to give as gifts. Fox executives started paying attention when they realized they were sitting on a gold mine. The show they had thrown away was generating more buzz and making more money in reruns than most of their current programming. This led to one of the most unprecedented decisions in television history. In 2005, Fox brought Family Guy back from the dead, making it the first canceled primetime series to be revived due to DVD sales and cable reruns. But the resurrection came with a price. Seth MacFarlane had moved on. He was working on other projects and wasn't sure he wanted to return to the world of Peter Griffin. Fox had to offer him an incredibly lucrative deal, including creative control and the promise to produce 2 additional animated series. This is how we eventually got American Dad and The Cleveland Show. Now let's talk about something that will make you see Stewie Griffin in a completely different light. The character was originally designed to be much more evil and sinister. In early episodes, Stewie was genuinely trying to kill Lois and take over the world. But something interesting happened as the show evolved. Seth MacFarlane and the writers began to soften Stewie's character, making him more of a sophisticated intellectual trapped in a baby's body rather than a genuine psychopath. This transformation wasn't accidental. MacFarlane has revealed that Stewie's character development was influenced by his own experiences and observations about childhood intelligence. The writers began to explore the idea that Stewie's apparent evil tendencies were actually the result of a brilliant mind struggling to communicate in a world that couldn't understand him. This is why later episodes show Stewie as more emotionally vulnerable and seeking connection rather than domination. Here's something that might disturb you about the show's research process. The writers of Family Guy have one of the most extensive research teams in television. They don't just make random pop culture references. Every joke, every cutaway, every cultural reference is carefully researched and fact-checked. The team maintains massive databases of information about celebrities, historical events, movies, music, and current events. This is why their parodies are so accurate and cutting. But this attention to detail has gotten them into serious trouble. The show has faced numerous lawsuits from celebrities and public figures who felt they were portrayed unfairly or inaccurately. Some of these legal battles have cost the production millions of dollars. In several cases, entire episodes had to be re-edited or pulled from circulation to avoid further legal complications. One of the most controversial moments in Family Guy history involves a joke that predicted a real tragedy. In a 2013 episode, there was a sequence involving bombs and the Boston Marathon. When the actual Boston Marathon bombing occurred just weeks after the episode aired, conspiracy theorists went crazy. They claimed the show had inside knowledge of the attack. The truth is much simpler but equally disturbing. It was a coincidence, but it highlighted how the show's edgy humor sometimes intersects with real-world events in uncomfortable ways. The production process of Family Guy is unlike any other animated show. While most animated series take months to produce each episode, Family Guy operates on an incredibly tight schedule that requires episodes to be completed in just a few weeks. This is possible because of their unique production pipeline that allows multiple episodes to be in different stages of production simultaneously. Seth MacFarlane's involvement in the show has changed dramatically over the years. While he still provides the voices for multiple characters including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, he's much less involved in the day-to-day writing and production. This transition happened gradually as MacFarlane became more interested in live-action projects and music career. Many fans don't realize that some of their favorite recent episodes were created with minimal input from the show's original creator. The voice acting process reveals some fascinating secrets about the characters. Seth MacFarlane records Peter Griffin's voice by speaking in a lower register than his natural voice, which sometimes causes strain during long recording sessions. For Stewie, he uses a combination of his natural speaking voice with a refined English accent that he developed specifically for the character. Brian's voice is actually closest to MacFarlane's real speaking voice, which is why their conversations often feel the most natural. Here's something that will change how you watch the show forever. Many of the cutaway gags that seem completely random are actually connected to larger storylines that were planned but never fully developed. The writers keep extensive notes about potential character backstories and plot developments. Sometimes these ideas surface as quick cutaway jokes instead of full episodes. This means that seemingly throwaway gags might actually be glimpses into alternative versions of the show that could have existed. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons is much more complex than the surface-level rivalry that fans discuss. Behind the scenes, there's actually a great deal of mutual respect between the creative teams. Several writers and animators have worked on both shows, and there are numerous hidden references and inside jokes that acknowledge this connection. The famous crossover episode took years to develop because both teams wanted to ensure they honored each other's creative legacy. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture in ways that are still being discovered. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall helped establish many of the comedic conventions that now dominate social media and online content. Phrases and concepts from the show have entered everyday language in ways that most people don't even realize. One of the most closely guarded secrets about Family Guy involves the process of celebrity guest appearances. The show has featured hundreds of celebrity voices over the years, but the selection process is incredibly strategic. The producers maintain detailed profiles of celebrities, including their sense of humor, willingness to make fun of themselves, and potential controversy factors. Some major stars have turned down appearances because they weren't comfortable with how they might be portrayed. The animation style of Family Guy appears simple, but it's actually incredibly sophisticated. The character designs are deliberately simplified to allow for rapid production, but the background art and scene composition often contain incredible detail that viewers miss during casual watching. The animators hide visual jokes and references in backgrounds that are only visible when episodes are paused or watched at high definition. The show's relationship with censorship has evolved dramatically over the years. Early episodes pushed boundaries that would be considered tame by today's standards, while recent episodes deal with topics that would have been completely forbidden when the show began. This evolution reflects changing cultural attitudes, but it also shows how the creative team has learned to work within and around broadcasting restrictions. Family Guy's influence on other animated shows is immeasurable. The success of its revival proved that adult animated comedies could be viable long-term properties. This directly led to the creation or continuation of shows like Rick and Morty, Bob's Burgers, and numerous others. The show essentially saved the entire genre of primetime adult animation. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually, but most of this success comes from international markets rather than domestic sales. The show's humor translates surprisingly well across cultural boundaries, making it one of the most globally successful American animated properties ever created. Behind the scenes, the show operates more like a comedy writer's room than a traditional animation studio. The collaborative process involves dozens of writers, animators, and producers working together to create each episode. Ideas can come from anywhere, and the best concepts often emerge from casual conversations rather than formal brainstorming sessions. The legacy of Family Guy extends far beyond entertainment into academic study. Universities now offer courses that analyze the show's cultural impact, comedic techniques, and social commentary. The show has become a legitimate subject of scholarly research in fields ranging from media studies to sociology. As we look toward the future, Family Guy continues to evolve while maintaining the irreverent spirit that made it a cultural phenomenon. The show that once faced cancellation has become an institution, proving that sometimes the most unexpected successes come from taking creative risks and refusing to compromise your vision. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has fundamentally changed television comedy forever. These hidden aspects of its creation and evolution reveal a complex, carefully crafted entertainment machine that continues to surprise and provoke audiences worldwide. The next time you watch an episode, you'll see it through completely different eyes, understanding the incredible journey that brought these characters from cancellation to global cultural dominance. What if I told you that the seemingly random chaos of Family Guy actually contains one of the most intricate and bizarre mythologies in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the strange, wonderful, and oddly comforting world of Family Griffin lore that will transport you to Quahog and beyond. Picture this: you're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stresses, when suddenly you remember that Family Guy isn't just a collection of cutaway gags and pop culture references. It's actually a surprisingly rich tapestry of interconnected stories, recurring characters, and hidden depths that have been building for over 2 decades. And tonight, we're going to explore every corner of this animated universe in a way that's perfect for drifting off to sleep. Let's start our journey in the town of Quahog, Rhode Island, a place that exists in its own pocket dimension, where the laws of physics are more like gentle suggestions, and where a talking dog can have a Harvard education, while his owner struggles to remember his own name. Quahog isn't just any fictional town. It's a carefully constructed world, with its own history, geography, and cast of hundreds of recurring characters, who each have their own stories to tell. The Griffin family home at 31 Spooner Street serves as our anchor point in this universe. This house has witnessed more supernatural events, time travel incidents, and reality-bending situations than most interdimensional portals. The basement alone has served as everything from a torture chamber to a speakeasy to a portal to different timelines. Each room in this house carries the weight of countless adventures, and if these walls could talk, they'd probably have their own spin-off series. Peter Griffin himself represents something fascinating in the realm of animated characters. He's not just a bumbling father figure. He's a force of nature who somehow manages to survive situations that would destroy lesser mortals. His job: history reads like a fever dream. Brewery worker, fisherman, Renaissance fair knight, bodyguard, paparazzi photographer, and even, briefly, the Pope. Each career change isn't just a throwaway gag, but adds another layer to the mythology of a man who seems to exist outside the normal rules of consequence and reality. The relationship between Peter and his nemesis Giant Chicken, whose real name is Ernie, represents one of television's greatest ongoing feuds. Their battles have destroyed significant portions of Quahog multiple times, yet somehow the town always rebuilds, often in slightly different configurations. These fights aren't just slapstick comedy. They're epic confrontations that span years of real-time storytelling, with each encounter escalating in scope and destruction. The chicken fights serve as a perfect metaphor for the cyclical nature of conflict and resolution, playing out across seasons like a modern-day mythological struggle between order and chaos. Stewie Griffin occupies a unique position in this universe as perhaps the most complex character in animated television. His journey from would-be matricidal infant to time-traveling genius to exploring his own identity represents character development that most live-action dramas would envy. Stewie's inventions have literally reshaped reality multiple times, from his time machine that creates alternate timelines, to his weather control device, to his teleportation technology. He's essentially a godlike being trapped in the body of a 1-year-old, which creates an inherent tension that drives many of the show's most interesting storylines. The relationship between Stewie and Brian forms the emotional core of much of Family Guy's deeper mythology. Brian, the talking dog with a bachelor's degree from Brown University, serves as both Stewie's best friend and his philosophical sparring partner. Their adventures together have taken them through time, across dimensions, and into the deepest corners of human and canine experience. Brian's struggles with alcoholism, his failed writing career, and his complex romantic relationships provide grounding for a show that otherwise revels in absurdity. The time travel episodes alone could fill an entire doctoral thesis. The show has established multiple timeline theories, from the straightforward cause and effect changes we see when Stewie prevents his own conception to the more complex multiverse implications of episodes where multiple versions of characters interact. The time travel mythology suggests that every possible version of events exists simultaneously, which explains how characters can die and return, how major life changes can be undone, and how the show can maintain its status quo despite earth-shattering events. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the series represents something unique in television, a character who literally moved to their own show and then came back, bringing with him the experiences and relationships from that separate universe. This creates a fascinating metatextual layer where the mythology of Family Guy expands to include the mythology of The Cleveland Show, creating an interconnected animated universe that predates many of the cinematic universes we see today. The recurring characters of Quahog each contribute their own threads to this elaborate tapestry. Glenn Quagmire isn't just the perverted neighbor. He's a complex character with his own tragic backstory, his career as a pilot that's taken him around the world, and his complicated relationships with his family members. His house has been the setting for numerous adventures and reveals, and his interactions with the Griffin family have evolved from simple antagonism to a more nuanced dynamic over the years. Joe Swanson represents resilience and determination in a universe that often seems cruel and arbitrary. His backstory as a police officer paralyzed in the line of duty provides weight to his character that goes beyond his role as comic relief. The episodes exploring his relationship with his wife Bonnie and their son Kevin add layers of domestic drama that ground the more outlandish elements of the show. Joe's adventures, from his time as an undercover cop to his brief stint as a superhero, show that even in a world of talking dogs and time machines, human courage and determination still matter. The mythology extends beyond Quahog to include locations like the Drunken Clam, which serves as more than just a bar. It's a sanctuary where the male characters can explore their friendships and fears away from their domestic responsibilities. The bar has witnessed confessions, celebrations, and confrontations that have shaped the relationships between the core characters. Even seemingly minor locations like the grocery store or the church have their own histories and recurring storylines that add depth to the world. The show's approach to celebrity culture creates its own mythology within the mythology. The numerous celebrity appearances aren't just random cameos. They often serve specific narrative functions and become part of the show's internal logic. When celebrities appear as themselves in Quahog, they enter a world where the normal rules don't apply, leading to interactions that are both surreal and surprisingly meaningful. These episodes often explore themes of fame, authenticity, and the price of celebrity in ways that are both hilarious and oddly poignant. The holiday episodes of Family Guy deserve special mention in any discussion of the show's mythology. Christmas episodes don't just repeat the same themes, they build on each other, creating an ongoing narrative about family, tradition, and the meaning of celebration in a chaotic world. The Halloween episodes explore different aspects of horror and the supernatural, often revealing hidden depths to characters we think we know completely. These seasonal episodes serve as anchor points in the show's timeline, providing structure to what might otherwise seem like random storytelling. The show's relationship with death is particularly fascinating from a mythological perspective. Characters die and return regularly, but these deaths aren't meaningless. They serve specific narrative purposes and often lead to character growth or revelation. When Brian died temporarily, the impact rippled through the entire cast and fanbase, demonstrating how deeply these characters have embedded themselves in our collective consciousness. The fact that death isn't permanent in this universe doesn't make it less meaningful. It makes it a tool for exploring different aspects of loss, grief, and redemption. The musical episodes and sequences throughout the series create their own subset of mythology. From Stewie's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's various band formations, music serves as a way for characters to express emotions and ideas that might otherwise be difficult to convey. These musical moments often reveal hidden talents and desires, adding new dimensions to familiar characters. The songs themselves become part of the show's cultural impact, living on beyond their original episodes. The show's exploration of alternate versions of characters provides fascinating glimpses into different possibilities within the Family Guy universe. Evil versions, successful versions, and radically different versions of familiar characters show us that the people we know are just one possible outcome of countless variables. This multiverse approach allows the show to explore different aspects of personality and relationships while maintaining the core dynamics that make the show work. The animal characters beyond Brian add their own elements to the mythology. From Vinny, the dog who temporarily replaced Brian, to the various pets and creatures that have appeared throughout the series, each brings their own perspective on the human condition. These characters often serve as voices of reason or chaos, depending on what the story requires, and their interactions with the main cast reveal different aspects of the characters' personalities. The show's approach to education and intelligence creates interesting contradictions that add depth to the mythology. While Peter is often portrayed as unintelligent, he occasionally displays surprising knowledge or skills that suggest hidden depths. Lois's background in music and her various adventures show that she's much more than just a patient wife and mother. These moments of unexpected competence or knowledge add layers to characters that might otherwise seem one-dimensional. The recurring gags and references throughout the series create their own mythology of inside jokes and shared experiences. The chicken fights, the various ways characters fall and hurt their knees, and the countless cutaway gags all contribute to a shared language that longtime viewers understand implicitly. These elements create a sense of community among fans and add richness to the viewing experience that rewards attention and memory. The show's treatment of technology and progress reflects our own changing relationship with innovation and change. From Stewie's advanced inventions to the family's struggles with new gadgets and social media, Family Guy chronicles our collective journey through the digital age. The technology in the show often serves as a catalyst for character development or plot advancement, showing how tools and toys can reveal hidden aspects of personality and relationships. As we reach the end of our journey through Family Guy's hidden mythology, it becomes clear that this seemingly simple cartoon has created something much more complex and enduring than its surface-level humor might suggest. The world of Quahog and its inhabitants represents a unique achievement in animated storytelling. See, a universe where anything can happen, but where the core relationships and emotions remain recognizably human. The comfort we find in Family Guy's chaos comes from its consistency within inconsistency. While the plots may be unpredictable and the situations absurd, the characters remain true to their essential natures, creating a reliable foundation beneath all the mayhem. This balance between surprise and familiarity makes it perfect viewing for those moments when we need something engaging enough to occupy our minds, but comfortable enough to help us relax. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander through the streets of Quahog, where talking dogs debate philosophy, babies build time machines, and ordinary families navigate extraordinary circumstances with humor and heart. In this world where anything is possible, perhaps the most magical thing of all is that love and friendship somehow manage to survive and thrive despite all the chaos surrounding them. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the world of Family Guy, tomorrow always brings new adventures, new laughs, and new reasons to appreciate the beautifully bizarre journey of life itself. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed scrolling through endless videos trying to find something that'll help you drift off to sleep? Most people go for rain sounds or meditation videos, but there's this weird corner of the internet that's discovered something completely unexpected: Family Guy lore videos. And honestly, it makes perfect sense once you think about it. Picture this: Peter Griffin's bumbling voice rambling about some ridiculous backstory while you slowly fade into dreamland. It's like having that one friend who tells really long, meandering stories that somehow become the perfect background noise for sleep. But here's the thing: Family Guy isn't just random jokes and cutaway gags. There's actually this incredibly deep, twisted universe hiding beneath all the chaos, and when you start exploring it at bedtime, something magical happens. Tonight, we're diving into the strangest, most soothing rabbit hole on YouTube. We're talking about Family Guy lore that's specifically designed to help you sleep. And trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll understand why millions of people are choosing Stewie's time travel adventures over counting sheep. Let's start with why this works so well. Your brain needs something engaging enough to distract from racing thoughts, but not so stimulating that it keeps you awake. Family Guy lore hits this sweet spot perfectly. The familiar voices create a sense of comfort, like having old friends nearby. The storylines are complex enough to occupy your mind, but delivered in that laid-back, conversational tone that naturally slows your heart rate. The beauty of Family Guy as sleep content lies in its structure. Unlike other shows that build tension toward climactic moments, Family Guy operates on this weird, episodic flow where nothing is too serious or urgent. Even when Peter is destroying the town or Stewie is plotting world domination, there's this underlying absurdity that signals to your brain that everything is okay. It's chaos, but comfortable chaos. One of the most popular sleep topics is Stewie's time travel timeline. Now, if you've watched the show casually, you might think Stewie's time adventures are just random episodes. But when you dig deeper, there's this incredibly complex web of cause and effect that spans decades. Stewie has literally shaped the Griffin family history in ways most viewers never realize. Think about it. In one timeline, Stewie prevents his own birth, which creates this paradox where he exists but shouldn't. In another, he saves his father's life, completely altering the family dynamic. These aren't just throwaway episodes. They're building blocks of an intricate multiverse where every action ripples through time. And when someone narrates this in a gentle, sleepy voice while you're tucked in bed, it becomes this dreamy exploration of cause and effect that naturally leads your mind into sleep. The time travel lore gets even more interesting when you consider Stewie's relationship with Brian. Their adventures through different eras reveal hidden layers of both characters. Brian isn't just the family dog who talks. He's this tortured intellectual who's lived through multiple timelines, sometimes remembering previous versions of events, sometimes completely oblivious. The complexity of their friendship across different realities becomes this beautiful, melancholy meditation on friendship and loyalty. What makes this perfect for sleep is how these time travel stories often end with everything returning to normal, or at least a version of normal. There's no real stakes because the show's format demands that the status quo be maintained. Your subconscious picks up on this pattern and relaxes, knowing that no matter how wild the adventure gets, the Griffin family will be okay by morning. Another incredibly soothing topic is the hidden depth of Peter Griffin's character. On the surface, he's just this obnoxious, immature father figure. But when you start examining his backstory, there's surprising emotional complexity. Peter's relationship with his own father, Francis, reveals layers of abandonment issues and the desperate need for approval that drives much of his behavior. The Catholic guilt that shapes Peter's worldview, his struggles with identity, his genuine love for his family despite constantly endangering them, all of this creates this rich psychological portrait. When narrated as bedtime content, Peter's flaws become almost endearing. He's not a bad person, he's just deeply human in the most ridiculous possible way. The show has quietly built this mythology around Peter's various jobs and failures. From working at the brewery to his brief stint as a country music star, each career represents a different aspect of the American dream gone wrong. But instead of being depressing, it's oddly comforting. Peter always bounces back, always finds something new to be enthusiastic about. His resilience becomes this gentle reminder that failure isn't permanent, that there's always another chance to mess things up in new and interesting ways. Lois Griffin's background provides another rich vein of sleep-friendly lore. Her wealthy upbringing, her musical talents, her complicated relationship with her parents, all of this creates this fascinating contrast with her current life. She chose chaos over comfort, love over luxury. When explored in that drowsy, contemplative tone that characterizes good sleep content, Lois becomes this complex figure who represents the compromises we all make for love. The show has revealed that Lois has this incredibly patient, almost saint-like quality that allows her to tolerate Peter's behavior. But occasionally, we see cracks in this facade, moments where her true feelings break through. These glimpses of Lois's inner life become fascinating character studies when presented as gentle bedtime analysis. Meg Griffin represents something even more interesting in the show's mythology. She's the perpetual outsider, the family member who never quite fits in. But when you examine her character closely, she's often the most sensible person in the room. Her isolation isn't really about her being unlikable. It's about her being different, more grounded than the rest of her chaotic family. The psychological dynamics of how the Griffin family treats Meg reveal uncomfortable truths about family structures and social hierarchies. But when explored as sleep content, these observations become philosophical musings rather than harsh critiques. Meg's resilience in the face of constant rejection becomes almost inspiring, a quiet testament to the strength of people who don't fit conventional molds. Chris Griffin's journey through adolescence provides another layer of gentle complexity. His artistic talents, his kind heart, his struggles with self-image, all of this unfolds against the backdrop of typical teenage challenges, amplified by his family's dysfunction. Chris represents hope in the Griffin universe, the possibility that the next generation might break free from destructive patterns. The show has developed this subtle running theme about Chris's potential. He's genuinely talented, genuinely caring, but constantly undermined by his environment. When narrated as bedtime content, Chris's story becomes this quiet meditation on nurture versus nature, on how children can maintain their essential goodness despite chaotic circumstances. Brian Griffin deserves special attention because he's arguably the most complex character in the entire series. He's an intellectual trapped in a dog's body, an artist struggling with mediocrity, a liberal idealist living in a conservative household. His pretensions and failures make him simultaneously the most relatable and most frustrating character. Brian's writing career, his romantic relationships, his drinking problem, his philosophical debates with Stewie, all of this creates this rich tapestry of middle-aged disappointment wrapped in surreal comedy. When presented as sleep content, Brian's struggles become universal human experiences filtered through the lens of absurdity. The relationship between Brian and Stewie forms the emotional core of many episodes, and their dynamic has evolved significantly over the show's long run. Early episodes portrayed them as adversaries, but they've developed into this unusual friendship between two intellectuals who understand each other's isolation within the Griffin household. Their conversations, whether they're traveling through time or just sitting in the living room, often touch on profound themes of mortality, purpose, and connection. When these moments are compiled and narrated as bedtime content, they become these surprisingly deep philosophical discussions that naturally lead the mind toward contemplative rest. The supporting characters in Family Guy have developed their own rich backstories that provide endless material for sleep-friendly content. Glenn Quagmire, despite his obvious character flaws, has this complex history as a pilot and adventurer. His relationship with his father, his military service, his various romantic entanglements, all of this creates this surprisingly detailed character study. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the show created interesting continuity questions that lore enthusiasts love to explore. The dynamics of the friend group, how relationships change over time, how people grow apart and come back together, these themes resonate on a deeper level when explored in that gentle, bedtime storytelling style. Joe Swanson's backstory as a police officer and his adjustment to life in a wheelchair provides material for surprisingly touching character exploration. His determination, his relationship with his family, his role as the moral center of Peter's friend group, all of this unfolds into rich character development that works beautifully as sleep content. The world building in Family Guy extends beyond the main characters to include the town of Quahog itself, the recurring locations, the background characters who appear across multiple episodes, the local politics and social dynamics. All of this creates a lived-in universe that feels surprisingly real, despite its cartoon absurdity. The show has developed this consistent internal logic about how Quahog operates, from the local government to the business community to the social hierarchies. When explored as lore content, these details create this comforting sense of a complete world where everything has its place, even if that place is completely ridiculous. Family Guy's relationship with pop culture provides another fascinating avenue for sleep-friendly exploration. The show's countless references and parodies create this massive web of connections to movies, TV shows, music, and historical events. Tracing these references becomes like a gentle intellectual exercise that occupies the mind without overstimulating it. The cultural commentary embedded in these references often reveals surprising insight about American society, entertainment, and human nature. When presented as bedtime analysis, these observations become thoughtful cultural criticism delivered in the most relaxed possible format. The show's approach to continuity creates interesting puzzles for lore enthusiasts. Some episodes clearly exist in the same universe, building on previous events and character development. Others seem to exist in isolation, resetting everything back to a baseline. Understanding which episodes connect and which stand alone becomes this gentle mental exercise, perfect for bedtime. This flexible approach to continuity actually enhances the show's value as sleep content. Unlike serialized dramas where missing details might leave you confused, Family Guy's episodic nature means you can drift in and out of consciousness without losing the thread of what's happening. The animation style and visual storytelling in Family Guy contribute to its effectiveness as sleep content. The character designs are simple and comforting. The color palette is warm and familiar, and the pacing of visual jokes follows predictable patterns. Your brain learns to anticipate the rhythm of the show, which naturally promotes relaxation. The voice acting deserves special mention because the performers have developed these characters over decades. The familiarity of these voices creates an immediate sense of comfort and security. Seth MacFarlane's multiple character voices, Alex Borstein as Lois, Mila Kunis as Meg, each voice becomes like a comfortable presence in your bedroom. The musical elements in Family Guy add another layer of sleep-friendly content. The show frequently features elaborate musical numbers that range from Broadway-style productions to simple character songs. These musical interludes often reveal character depths and emotions that regular dialogue might not capture. When compiled as sleep content, these musical moments become like gentle lullabies that showcase different aspects of the characters' personalities. Conway's witty performances, Stewie's show tunes, Peter's various musical adventures, all of this creates a diverse soundtrack for drifting off to sleep. The show's exploration of family dynamics provides universal themes that resonate regardless of the absurd context. The Griffin family, despite their dysfunction, genuinely cares about each other. Their conflicts and reconciliations follow familiar patterns that most viewers can relate to from their own family experiences. When examined as bedtime content, these family relationships become comforting reminders of the complexity and resilience of human connections. Even when Peter does something incredibly selfish or Stewie plots against his mother, the underlying love and loyalty always reassert themselves. The meta-humor in Family Guy creates another interesting layer for lore exploration. The show frequently acknowledges its own existence as a television program, breaking the fourth wall and commenting on its own production. These moments create this playful relationship between the show and its audience that enhances its value as comfort viewing. Understanding the real-world context behind certain episodes and jokes adds depth to the viewing experience without requiring intense concentration. The show's commentary on television, animation, and entertainment industry becomes gentle insider knowledge that enhances appreciation without demanding active analysis. The evolution of Family Guy over its many seasons provides rich material for comparative analysis. Early episodes had different character dynamics, different humor styles, and different production values. Tracing how the show has changed and developed becomes like following the growth of old friends. This long-term perspective on the series creates a sense of history and continuity that enhances its comfort value. You're not just watching random episodes. You're participating in this ongoing story that has unfolded over decades of real time. The fan community around Family Guy has developed its own theories and interpretations that add layers of meaning to seemingly simple episodes. These fan theories become part of the show's extended lore, creating additional content for exploration and discussion. When presented as bedtime content, these fan interpretations and theories become like bedtime stories shared among friends. They're speculative and playful rather than definitive, which makes them perfect for that drowsy state between wakefulness and sleep. The cultural impact of Family Guy extends beyond entertainment into social commentary and cultural criticism. The show has influenced animation, humor, and television production in measurable ways. Understanding this broader impact adds depth to individual episodes without requiring intense focus. This cultural context becomes another gentle layer of analysis that enhances the viewing experience. You're not just watching cartoons, you're experiencing a significant piece of contemporary American culture that has shaped entertainment and comedy. The merchandising and spin-off content around Family Guy creates additional universe expansion that lore enthusiasts love to explore. Video games, books, merchandise, and related media all contribute to the overall Griffin family mythology. These extensions of the core show become like supplementary reading that enhances understanding without being essential. They're bonus content that rewards dedicated fans while remaining accessible to casual viewers. So there you have it, the surprisingly deep and genuinely soothing world of Family Guy lore designed specifically for sleep. What started as a simple animated comedy has evolved into this rich, complex universe filled with character development, cultural commentary, and surprisingly profound themes about family, friendship, and human nature. The next time you're lying awake at 3 a.m, scrolling through endless content options, remember that sometimes the most unexpected choices make the best bedtime companions. Peter Griffin's chaotic adventures and Stewie's time travel paradoxes might just be exactly what your brain needs to finally relax and drift off into peaceful sleep. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the multiverse of Family Guy, everything always works out in the end, which is exactly the kind of reassurance we all need before closing our eyes for the night. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy has become the internet's unofficial lullaby? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and surprisingly comforting world of Quahog, Rhode Island, where nothing makes sense, and somehow that's exactly what our brains need to drift off to sleep. From Peter's ridiculous schemes to Stewie's world domination plots, we'll explore every corner of the Griffin family universe that has helped millions fall asleep over the past 2 decades. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually paid attention to a Family Guy episode from start to finish? If you're like most people, you probably can't remember, because this show has transcended traditional viewing. It's become background noise, comfort food for your ears, a familiar chaos that somehow brings peace to restless minds across the globe. The phenomenon of falling asleep to Family Guy isn't just coincidence. There's actually a psychological explanation for why this particular animated sitcom has become the go-to choice for nighttime viewing. The show operates on what I call controlled chaos. While the plots are completely unpredictable and often nonsensical, the characters remain consistent in their absurdity. Your brain recognizes the patterns even when the content is random, creating a perfect storm of familiarity and unpredictability that helps quiet anxious thoughts. Let's start our journey through Family Guy lore with the patriarch himself, Peter Griffin. This beer-loving, chicken-fighting, scheme-hatching father has been the center of countless storylines that range from mildly ridiculous to absolutely insane. Peter's character represents the everyman taken to impossible extremes. He works at a brewery, loves television, struggles with his weight, and has an adversarial relationship with his teenage daughter. These are relatable elements wrapped in layers of cartoon absurdity. One of the most enduring aspects of Peter's character is his ongoing feud with Ernie the Giant Chicken. This rivalry began over an expired coupon and has escalated into epic battle sequences that destroy entire city blocks. The chicken fights serve as a perfect metaphor for how Family Guy operates. What starts as something mundane and everyday transforms into spectacular chaos, yet viewers accept it as normal within the show's universe. Peter's job history alone could fill hours of content. He's worked at the Happy-Go-Lucky Toy Factory, tried his hand at various entrepreneurial ventures, and somehow always ends up back at the Pawtucket Brewery. His work relationships, particularly with his friends Cleveland, Joe, and Quagmire, form the backbone of many episodes. These friendships represent a kind of arrested development, where grown men engage in childish activities and conversations, creating a comfort zone that many viewers find soothing. Speaking of Peter's friends, each one represents a different aspect of suburban male friendship taken to cartoon extremes. Cleveland Brown, before moving to his own spin-off show, was the voice of reason in the group, though his definition of reasonable was still pretty skewed. Joe Swanson brings physical comedy through his wheelchair-bound police officer character, often engaging in activities that would be impossible for someone with his disability, which the show treats as completely normal. Then, there's Glenn Quagmire, the pilot with an insatiable appetite for romantic encounters. Quagmire's character serves as the show's id, expressing desires and behaviors that are completely inappropriate, but delivered in such an over-the-top manner that they become cartoon villainy rather than realistic threats. His famous giggity giggity catchphrase has become part of internet culture, often used ironically to reference something vaguely suggestive. The Griffin household itself is a character in the show. This typical suburban home has been destroyed and rebuilt countless times, serving as the stage for domestic chaos that somehow always resets to normal by the next episode. The living room, with its familiar brown couch and television, has become an iconic setting that viewers associate with comfort and routine. Lois Griffin represents the long-suffering wife archetype, but with layers of complexity that unfold over multiple seasons. Her wealthy background, her brief career as a model, and her occasional outbursts of violence create a character who's both nurturing and dangerous. Lois serves as the family's moral center, though her morality is often compromised by the show's need for comedy. Her relationship with Peter showcases a marriage that defies all logic, yet somehow works within the show's universe. The Griffin children each represent different aspects of growing up in modern America, filtered through the show's twisted lens. Meg Griffin, the teenage daughter, exists primarily as the family's punching bag. Her character represents every awkward teenager's worst fears amplified to ridiculous proportions. The family's treatment of Meg borders on cruel, yet it's presented in such an exaggerated manner that it becomes absurdist comedy rather than realistic family dysfunction. Chris Griffin, the teenage son, embodies adolescent confusion and hormones. His character often serves as Peter's mini-me, inheriting his father's capacity for poor decision-making while maintaining a certain innocent charm. Chris's storylines often explore themes of identity, attraction, and the awkwardness of growing up, but always through the show's comedic filter. But perhaps no character has captured audiences' imagination quite like Stewie Griffin, the infant with the British accent and dreams of world domination. Stewie represents pure ambition, untempered by experience or wisdom. His elaborate schemes for taking over the world, or eliminating his mother, provide endless entertainment, while also serving as commentary on human nature's darker impulses. Stewie's relationship with Brian the dog creates some of the show's most compelling storylines. Their friendship transcends species and age, representing an idealized relationship between two intelligent beings who understand each other completely. Brian serves as Stewie's confidant, partner in crime, and occasionally his voice of reason, though Brian's own flaws often make him an unreliable moral guide. Brian Griffin deserves special attention as perhaps the most complex character in the Family Guy universe. As an anthropomorphic dog who walks upright, drives a car, and engages in adult relationships, Brian represents the show's complete abandonment of logical consistency. He's a failed novelist, a liberal activist, and an alcoholic, creating a character who embodies both aspiration and failure. The show's use of cutaway gags has become its signature storytelling device. These random flashbacks, fantasy sequences, and non-sequitur moments serve multiple purposes. They allow the writers to explore any topic or reference any piece of pop culture without worrying about narrative consistency. For viewers trying to fall asleep, these cutaways create a dreamlike quality where anything can happen, and often does. Family Guy's relationship with pop culture is both parasitic and symbiotic. The show references everything from obscure television commercials to major historical events, creating a shared cultural experience for viewers. These references serve as comfort food for the brain, triggering recognition and nostalgia even when the context is completely absurd. The show's treatment of time and continuity is particularly noteworthy for sleep viewing. Characters can die and return to life, major life changes can be reversed without explanation, and the family's economic situation fluctuates wildly from episode to episode. This lack of consequences creates a consequence-free environment, where viewers don't need to worry about long-term character development or ongoing plot threads. Seth MacFarlane's voice work deserves recognition for contributing to the show's sleep-friendly qualities. His performance as multiple characters creates a consistent vocal landscape that becomes familiar and comforting over time. The way he delivers Peter's lines, Stewie's sophisticated vocabulary, and Brian's neurotic observations creates distinct character voices while maintaining an underlying consistency that helps viewers relax. The show's approach to controversial topics through cartoon abstraction makes it perfect for background viewing. Serious subjects are processed through layers of absurdity until they become manageable, non-threatening content. This filtering effect allows viewers to engage with complex themes without the emotional weight that might keep them awake. Family Guy's musical elements also contribute to its sleep-friendly nature. From Conway Twitty performances to original songs like Surfin' Bird, the show incorporates music in unexpected ways that create variety within familiarity. These musical interludes serve as natural breakpoints in the narrative flow, creating rhythmic patterns that complement the relaxation process. The show's animation style strikes a perfect balance between detailed enough to be interesting and simple enough to not be overstimulating. The character designs are iconic yet basic, allowing viewers to recognize what's happening without needing to focus intently on visual details. This visual simplicity makes it ideal for peripheral viewing as you drift off to sleep. Supporting characters like Herbert the elderly neighbor, the evil monkey in Chris's closet, and Death himself create a rich universe that extends beyond the Griffin family. These recurring characters provide continuity and familiarity, while also serving as sources of unexpected humor and comfort. The show's handling of social issues through satirical exaggeration creates a safe space for processing real-world anxieties. By taking serious topics and pushing them to absurd extremes, Family Guy allows viewers to engage with difficult subjects in a non-threatening way. This processing can actually be therapeutic for people trying to quiet their minds before sleep. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Memes, reaction GIFs, and quotable moments from the show have become part of online communication. This cultural penetration means that falling asleep to Family Guy connects viewers to a broader community experience, creating a sense of shared comfort and belonging. The show's production history includes periods of cancellation and revival, creating a mythology around its own existence. Fans who supported its return feel a personal investment in its success, making the viewing experience more emotionally satisfying. This investment translates into comfort when using the show as sleep aid, as viewers feel they're supporting something they helped save. As we wrap up our journey through Family Guy lore, it's worth considering why this particular show has achieved such a unique cultural position. In a world full of stress, uncertainty, and serious problems, Family Guy offers a space where nothing has permanent consequences, where the absurd is normal, and where even the worst situations somehow work out in the end. The show's genius lies not in its individual jokes or storylines, but in its creation of a universe where chaos and comfort coexist. For millions of viewers, the Griffin family's problems make their own seem manageable, while the show's predictable unpredictability provides just enough mental stimulation to quiet anxious thoughts without preventing sleep. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who's discovered the show through its reputation as internet comfort food, Family Guy continues to serve as a bridge between consciousness and sleep, a familiar voice in the darkness that reminds us that tomorrow, like every Family Guy episode, is a fresh start, where anything is possible and nothing really matters. Sweet dreams, and remember, we all live in Quahog in our hearts, where the beer is cold, the chicken fights are epic, and Peter Griffin's laugh echoes through eternity. Picture this. It's 2 a.m, you're tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. Your mind is racing with thoughts about tomorrow's responsibilities, that awkward conversation from 3 weeks ago, and whether you left the stove on. What you need isn't another meditation app or white noise machine. You need something perfectly mundane, yet oddly fascinating. You need random Family Guy facts that will occupy just enough of your brain to let sleep creep in without being so exciting that they keep you awake. Tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog, with facts so specific and delightfully pointless that they'll have you drifting off faster than Peter Griffin at a feminist poetry reading. Let's start with something that sounds completely made up but is absolutely real. The chicken fights between Peter Griffin and Ernie the Giant Chicken have collectively lasted over 20 minutes of screen time across all episodes. 20 minutes. That's longer than most sitcom episodes dedicate to their main plot. These epic battles began over something so ridiculously petty that it perfectly encapsulates the show's absurdist humor. An expired coupon. Not a life-changing amount of money, not a family heirloom, but a piece of paper that saves you maybe 50 cents on chicken feed. Yet this trivial dispute has spawned some of the most elaborate and destructive fight sequences in television history. The creators didn't plan for these fights to become a recurring element. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but audience response was so positive that it became a signature element of the show. Each subsequent battle had to top the previous one in terms of scope and destruction. They've fought in the streets, crashed through buildings, battled in the sky, and even taken their conflict underwater. The animators spend weeks choreographing these sequences, treating them with the same attention to detail that major studios reserve for blockbuster action films. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Every episode of Family Guy requires approximately 15,000 individual drawings. In the digital age, this seems almost quaint, but the show maintains a hand-drawn aesthetic that demands incredible attention to detail. Each character's movement, each facial expression, each background element starts as a pencil sketch. The animators have developed shortcuts and techniques over the years, but the fundamental process remains surprisingly labor-intensive. The voice actors record their lines before any animation begins, which means the animators have to match the drawings to the vocal performances rather than the other way around. This creates some interesting challenges. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, and he often has conversations with himself during recording sessions. The sound engineers have become experts at seamlessly blending these multi-character performances, creating the illusion that Peter, Brian, and Stewie are actually in the same room talking to each other. Speaking of voices, here's a fact that demonstrates just how integral Seth MacFarlane is to the show's DNA. He voices 4 main characters, plus dozens of recurring characters and one-off personalities. When he temporarily stepped back from the show to focus on other projects, the producers seriously considered ending Family Guy rather than recasting his roles. They eventually found ways to work around his reduced availability, but it highlighted how deeply connected the show is to MacFarlane's specific vocal talents and comedic sensibilities. The show's relationship with censorship has produced some genuinely bizarre situations over the years. There are jokes that were cut from the television broadcast but restored for DVD releases, creating alternate versions of episodes that exist in different formats. Some episodes have different running times, depending on where and how you watch them. The censors have made requests that seem arbitrary to outside observers. Violence is often acceptable, but certain types of language or visual gags get flagged for removal. This has led to some creative workarounds by the writing team. They've developed a sort of code for getting controversial material past the censors. Sometimes they'll include an extremely offensive joke that they know will be rejected, making their actually intended joke seem mild by comparison. It's a psychological negotiation tactic that has become part of their standard writing process. Here's something that sounds like trivia, but actually reveals something profound about how the show is made. The writer's room keeps a collection of rejected joke ideas that they call the too weird pile. These aren't jokes that are too offensive or inappropriate, but rather concepts that are so strange or specific that they don't fit into any episode. Occasionally, they'll build an entire storyline around one of these orphaned ideas, which explains why some episodes feel like fever dreams that shouldn't work but somehow do. The show's approach to celebrity cameos is more strategic than it might appear. When famous people appear as themselves, they're usually playing exaggerated versions of their public personas rather than trying to seem likable or relatable. The writers deliberately lean into whatever characteristic or controversy that celebrity is known for, creating appearances that feel more like roasts than typical guest spots. This approach has occasionally caused problems when celebrities change their minds about how they want to be portrayed, leading to last-minute script changes or even canceled episodes. Family Guy's relationship with its own continuity is fascinatingly inconsistent. The writers will sometimes reference events from episodes that aired years earlier, demonstrating that they do pay attention to their own history. But they'll just as often completely ignore or contradict previously established facts about the characters or their world. This isn't laziness or poor planning, but rather a deliberate choice to prioritize individual episode quality over series-long consistency. The animation team has developed a visual shorthand for different types of scenes that regular viewers might not consciously notice but definitely feel. Flashback sequences use slightly different color palettes and animation techniques. Dream sequences have their own visual language. Even the way characters move changes depending on whether a scene is meant to be realistic or cartoonish within the show's already cartoonish world. Here's a production detail that reveals how much thought goes into seemingly throwaway moments. Background characters and crowd scenes aren't just randomly generated. The animators create specific individuals with their own implied backstories, even though these characters might only appear for a few seconds. They've developed a whole population of Quahog residents who appear in multiple episodes, creating an illusion of a lived-in community, even though most viewers would never consciously recognize these recurring background players. The show's musical numbers require a completely different production pipeline from regular episodes. They start with Seth MacFarlane or other musically inclined staff members creating rough recordings of the songs. Then professional arrangers develop full orchestrations. The voice actors record their vocals to these arrangements. Only after all the music is complete do the animators begin creating visuals to match. This process can take months for a single musical sequence, which explains why these segments often feel more polished and elaborate than the surrounding episode. Family Guy's approach to holiday episodes reveals something interesting about how the writers view their own show. They treat holiday specials as opportunities to experiment with different formats or storytelling techniques. Rather than simply plugging their characters into traditional holiday scenarios, Christmas episodes might be musicals, Halloween episodes might be horror parodies, and so on. This keeps the show from falling into the predictable patterns that plague many long-running series. The show's merchandise presents some unique challenges because of how the characters are designed. Peter Griffin's proportions don't translate well to three-dimensional objects, leading to action figures and toys that look subtly wrong. The merchandising team has had to develop modified character designs specifically for products, creating versions of the characters that maintain their essential appearance while being more practically manufacturable. Here's something that demonstrates the show's attention to detail in unexpected areas. The writers have created complete backstories for characters who have never appeared on screen. They know the names and personalities of Brian's parents, even though this information has never been relevant to any episode. They've developed detailed histories for minor recurring characters that extend far beyond anything that's ever been shown. This background work helps maintain consistency in how these characters behave, even when they're only making brief appearances. The show's relationship with its own spin-offs created some interesting continuity challenges. When the Cleveland show was in production, storylines had to be coordinated between writing teams to ensure that Cleveland's appearances on Family Guy didn't contradict what was happening on his own show. This led to some awkward scheduling situations where episodes had to be rewritten or delayed to maintain consistency across both series. Family Guy's approach to celebrity deaths has evolved over the years in response to changing cultural sensitivities. Early episodes would sometimes include jokes about recently deceased public figures, but the writers now generally avoid this territory. Unless enough time has passed for such references to feel like historical commentary rather than current events humor. This self-imposed guideline has prevented some potentially awkward situations where episodes would have aired shortly after unexpected celebrity deaths. The show's animators have developed specialized techniques for different types of scenes that regular viewers probably don't notice but contribute to the overall viewing experience. Fight scenes use different frame rates and animation principles than dialogue scenes. Fantasy sequences might employ completely different artistic styles. The animators treat each type of scene as requiring its own approach, making Family Guy more visually diverse than many people realize. Here's a fact that illustrates how deeply the show has embedded itself in popular culture. The writers receive hundreds of suggestions from fans every week, ranging from episode ideas to character suggestions to complaints about plot inconsistencies. While they can't use fan-submitted ideas for legal reasons, these communications help them understand how their audience perceives the show and what elements are most popular or problematic. The show's approach to social media and internet culture has changed dramatically over its run. Early episodes barely acknowledged the existence of the internet, while recent seasons treat social media and online culture as fundamental aspects of modern life. The writers have had to learn new forms of humor and reference that didn't exist when the show began, essentially evolving their comedy style to match changing technology and communication patterns. Family Guy's international versions present fascinating translation challenges. Jokes that rely on American cultural references or wordplay often can't be directly translated, leading to completely different jokes in dubbed versions. Some countries have created culturally specific versions of certain episodes, replacing American references with local equivalents. This has resulted in versions of Family Guy that are almost entirely different shows while maintaining the same basic characters and plot lines. The show's writers maintain detailed style guides that specify how each character speaks, what types of references they would make, and how they would react in different situations. These guides help maintain consistency across different writers and ensure that characters don't drift too far from their established personalities. Brian's dialogue, for example, follows specific patterns that reflect his pretentious intellectual aspirations, while Chris's speech patterns reflect his slower mental processing speed. Here's something that reveals the show's commitment to its own absurdist logic. The writers have created internal rules for how the show's universe works that they follow even when these rules are never explicitly stated. They know how long it takes to travel between different locations in Quahog, which characters know each other, and what each character's financial situation is like. This background consistency helps ground even the most ridiculous storylines in something resembling reality. The show's merchandise licensing deals have created some genuinely strange products over the years. There have been Family Guy-themed everything from breakfast cereals to car accessories to wedding decorations. The licensing team has to consider whether each potential product fits with the show's brand, leading to some philosophical discussions about what Family Guy represents as a cultural entity beyond just a television program. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has become more sophisticated over the years, moving from simple shock value toward more nuanced satirical commentary. The writers now spend considerable time researching topics before writing about them, ensuring that their jokes come from a place of understanding rather than ignorance. This doesn't mean they avoid controversial subjects, but rather that they approach them with more intentionality. The show's animators have developed a visual signature that makes Family Guy immediately recognizable, even in brief clips or promotional materials. This involves not just character design but also choices about color palettes, camera angles, and motion principles. New animators joining the team have to learn these specific techniques to ensure visual consistency across different episodes and seasons. Here's a production detail that most viewers would never think about, but significantly impacts the viewing experience. The show's sound design team creates distinct audio signatures for different characters and locations. Peter's footsteps sound different from Brian's. The Griffin house has its own acoustic characteristics, and even the way doors close varies depending on the context. These subtle audio cues help create the illusion of a consistent physical world, even though everything is animated. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are drawing the next batch of Family Guy episodes, voice actors are recording dialogue for situations that don't exist, and writers are debating whether jokes about topics you've never considered are funny enough to include in a television show. The machinery of entertainment continues turning even while you rest, creating the content that will occupy your mind during tomorrow night's journey toward sleep. Sweet dreams. And remember that in the grand scheme of things, we're all just characters in someone else's animated universe, trying to make sense of the absurd situations we find ourselves in. You know those nights when you're scrolling endlessly through your phone, looking for something to help you drift off to sleep? Well, tonight we're diving into the chaotic world of Quahog with some absolutely wild Family Guy facts that'll either fascinate you into dreamland or keep you up all night thinking about how bizarre this show really is. Trust me, some of these will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds almost too crazy to be true. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox. Yeah, you heard that right. The show got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But here's where it gets interesting. The fans weren't having it. They launched massive campaigns, flooded Fox with letters, and basically refused to let their beloved dysfunctional Griffin family disappear forever. Adult Swim started airing reruns, and the DVD sales went through the roof. Fox executives looked at those numbers and thought, maybe we made a mistake. So they brought it back in 2005, only to cancel it again in 2012. But once again, fan outcry was so intense that the network reversed their decision within weeks. Talk about people power. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the show's wild behind-the-scenes stories. The character of Peter Griffin was originally supposed to be much different. Creator Seth MacFarlane based Peter's voice on a security guard he knew, but he also drew inspiration from the classic cartoon character Popeye. If you listen carefully, you can hear those gruff, mumbly speech patterns that make Peter so distinctively annoying and lovable at the same time. Speaking of voices, here's something that might keep you up thinking about it. Seth MacFarlane voices not just Peter, but also Brian, Stewie, Glenn Quagmire, and Tom Tucker. The man is basically having conversations with himself for half the show. Imagine the recording sessions where he's literally arguing with himself in different voices. It's like the ultimate one-man show, except it's happening in a professional recording studio with millions of people watching. Now let's talk about some of the more bizarre facts that really showcase how unpredictable this show can be. Remember Ernie the Giant Chicken? That massive yellow bird who gets into those epic, destructive fights with Peter? Well, those fight scenes weren't just random comedy bits. They were actually Seth MacFarlane's way of paying homage to classic action movies and anime fight sequences. Each battle is choreographed like a legitimate action scene, complete with dramatic music, slow-motion moments, and enough property damage to bankrupt a small city. The first chicken fight lasted over 3 minutes, which in animation terms is basically a feature film. Here's something that'll make you think differently about the show's timeline. Family Guy exists in this weird temporal bubble where nobody really ages, but the show constantly references current events. The Griffin kids have been teenagers and babies for over 20 years, yet the show has covered everything from early 2000s pop culture to current social media trends. It's like they're stuck in some kind of cartoon time warp where only the references to the outside world change. The show's approach to controversial topics is another fascinating aspect. Seth MacFarlane has always used Family Guy as a platform to push boundaries and challenge social norms, but he's also incredibly strategic about it. Many of the most shocking moments are actually carefully crafted to spark discussion rather than just offend for the sake of it. The writers spend considerable time debating which lines to cross and which ones to respect, even though the end result might seem completely chaotic. Let's dive into some character-specific facts that reveal just how much thought goes into this seemingly random show. Stewie's British accent has never been officially explained within the show's universe. Seth MacFarlane gave him that posh, sophisticated voice partly as a joke about how American audiences often perceive British accents as more intelligent, but also because it creates this hilarious contrast with his baby appearance and diabolical personality. The accent has become so iconic that fans can instantly recognize Stewie just from hearing a single word. Brian the dog represents something unique in animation history. He's essentially the show's conscience, the character who often voices the writer's more serious opinions about politics and social issues. But here's the kicker. He's also deeply flawed and hypocritical, which makes him more realistic than many human characters on television. His struggles with alcoholism, his pretentious intellectualism, and his unrequited love for Lois create this complex personality that shouldn't work in a cartoon dog, but somehow does perfectly. The show's relationship with censorship is absolutely wild. While Family Guy gets away with an incredible amount of controversial content, there are still things that get cut or altered. The writers have developed this elaborate game with network censors, sometimes including deliberately outrageous content that they expect to be removed, just so they can keep the stuff they really want. It's like a negotiation tactic disguised as comedy writing. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Each episode takes approximately 10 months to complete from initial concept to final broadcast. That means the writers are constantly juggling multiple episodes at different stages of production. They might be recording voices for one episode while editing animation for another and brainstorming ideas for a third. It's this incredibly complex timeline that allows them to stay current with pop culture references while maintaining consistent character development. The merchandising aspect of Family Guy reveals some interesting insights into fan behavior. Stewie, Griffin merchandise consistently outsells products featuring any other character, including Peter. There's something about that evil baby that resonates with audiences in ways that even surprise the show's creators. Maybe it's his quotability, his distinctive design, or just the absurdity of a homicidal infant, but fans can't get enough of Stewie-themed products. Let's talk about some of the more obscure references that hardcore fans love to discover. The show is packed with callbacks to obscure 1,980 seconds movies, forgotten television commercials, and incredibly specific cultural moments that most viewers won't catch on first viewing. The writers take pride in creating these layers of humor that reward careful attention and repeat watching. Some jokes are designed to be funny on the surface level, while others require extensive pop culture knowledge to fully appreciate. The show's approach to holiday episodes is particularly interesting. Instead of creating heartwarming, family-friendly specials, Family Guy consistently subverts holiday traditions and expectations. Their Christmas episodes often feature apocalyptic scenarios, their Halloween content pushes horror boundaries, and even their Thanksgiving episodes manage to be simultaneously touching and deeply disturbing. It's like they've made it their mission to corrupt every major holiday. Voice acting for Family Guy involves some surprisingly physical performances. Seth MacFarlane often moves around dramatically while recording, especially for Peter's voice, because the character's speech patterns require specific breathing techniques and physical positioning. The other voice actors have picked up similar habits, leading to recording sessions that look more like interpretive dance than traditional voice work. The show's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences. In some countries, certain episodes are completely banned, while others require extensive editing or dubbing changes that alter entire joke structures. The German version, for example, has to navigate completely different censorship standards, leading to creative workarounds that sometimes make the international versions funnier than the originals. Here's something that connects to the show's longevity. Family Guy has survived multiple major changes in television viewing habits. It started during the era of appointment television, adapted to the DVR age, thrived during the streaming revolution, and now exists in the world of on-demand binge-watching culture. Each transition has required subtle adjustments to pacing, storytelling, and even joke structures to match how audiences consume content. The show's relationship with its own continuity is deliberately chaotic. While some animated series maintain strict continuity, Family Guy treats its own history as more of a suggestion than a rule. Characters die and come back. Major events get forgotten or contradicted, and timeline inconsistencies are often acknowledged with jokes rather than explanations. This approach gives the writers incredible freedom, but also creates this surreal viewing experience where anything could happen at any time. Celebrity guest appearances on Family Guy often involve more work than you might expect. Many famous people who lend their voices to the show also help develop their characters' personality and dialogue. Some celebrities have even pitched entire storylines or specific jokes that ended up in episodes. It's become this collaborative process where guest stars are genuinely involved in the creative process, rather than just showing up to read predetermined lines. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over the years, but the changes are so gradual that most viewers don't notice them. Early episodes have a rougher, more hand-drawn quality, while recent episodes feature incredibly smooth computer-assisted animation. The character designs have also subtly shifted, with faces becoming more expressive and movements becoming more fluid. It's like watching the entire animation industry evolve through one show's progression. Family Guy's approach to social media and internet culture is particularly fascinating. The show has managed to stay relevant across multiple digital revolutions by constantly adapting its humor to current online trends. But instead of just making surface-level references to viral videos or memes, the writers dig deeper into how internet culture affects human behavior and social interactions. They're essentially providing commentary on how we've all changed as people due to digital connectivity. The show's musical numbers deserve special recognition for their complexity and production value. These aren't just throwaway jokes. They're fully orchestrated, professionally performed pieces that often parody specific musical genres or famous songs. Seth MacFarlane's background in musical theater influences these sequences, resulting in surprisingly sophisticated compositions that could stand alone as legitimate musical entertainment. Here's something that really shows the show's attention to detail. The background characters in Quahog have their own consistent personalities and storylines that play out across multiple episodes. If you pay attention, you'll notice recurring extras who have their own character arcs happening in the background, while the main characters deal with their primary storylines. It creates this sense of a living, breathing community rather than just a backdrop for the Griffin family's adventures. The show's handling of controversial real-world events demonstrates a careful balance between comedy and sensitivity. While Family Guy is known for pushing boundaries, the writers actually spend considerable time discussing how to address serious topics without completely undermining their impact. Sometimes they decide certain events are too sensitive to joke about immediately, waiting months or even years before finding the right comedic angle. And here's something that brings us full circle to why Family Guy works so well as bedtime entertainment. Despite all its chaos and controversy, there's something oddly comforting about the show's consistency. No matter how crazy the world gets, you can count on the Griffin family to be dealing with their own ridiculous problems in their own ridiculous ways. It's like a reliable friend who always has a completely absurd story to distract you from whatever's keeping you awake. So there you have it. 20 years of Family Guy condensed into the kind of random facts that either help you drift off to sleep or give you something interesting to think about as you lie there in the dark. Sweet dreams. And remember, if you can't sleep, at least you're not dealing with a giant chicken trying to destroy your entire neighborhood over an expired coupon. Picture this. You're lying in bed, ready to drift off to sleep, but your brain just won't switch off. Well, tonight's different. Tonight, we're going on a gentle journey through the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy with some truly fascinating facts that'll help ease you into dreamland. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you want, and let's explore the Griffin family universe together. Let me start with something that might surprise you. Peter Griffin wasn't always meant to be the bumbling father figure we know today. The creators originally envisioned him as more of a traditional sitcom dad. But Seth MacFarlane quickly realized that making Peter completely incompetent would be far more entertaining. This decision shaped the entire show's DNA, creating a character whose stupidity knows no bounds. Speaking of Peter's origins, here's a delightfully absurd detail about his background. According to the show's mythology, Peter is actually of mixed Irish and Mexican heritage, which explains some of his more colorful personality traits. His biological father, Mickey McFinnigan, lives in Ireland and has a talking sheep companion named O'Brien. When Peter finally meets Mickey, they bond over a drinking contest, because of course they do. It's these little touches of insanity that make Family Guy so uniquely entertaining. The Griffin family tree is absolutely bonkers when you really dig into it. Take Francis Griffin, Peter's strict Catholic stepfather who despised Lois for not being Irish enough. This man was so religiously rigid that he even dismissed the Pope's approval of Peter and Lois's marriage. But here's the kicker. Francis later became the Pope's special assistant. The irony is delicious, and it perfectly captures the show's love of contradictory character development. Now, let's talk about something that might help you sleep better. The show's approach to time and continuity. Unlike many animated series that maintain strict timelines, Family Guy operates in a floating timeline where characters can age or stay the same age depending on what the story needs. Stewie, for instance, has been 1 year old for over 2 decades, yet he's traveled through time, built complex inventions, and had philosophical discussions about existence. This fluid approach to reality creates a dreamlike quality that's oddly soothing. Here's a gentle fact about Chris Griffin that showcases the show's surprising depth beneath all the chaos. Despite being portrayed as academically hopeless, Chris actually has genuine artistic talent. In one episode, he gets accepted to art school, but chooses to stay with his family instead. It's moments like these that remind us there's heart underneath all the madness, even in characters who seem purely comedic. Let me share something about Stewie that's both fascinating and oddly comforting. His relationship with Brian the dog represents one of television's most unusual friendships. They've been through adventures across time and space. They've argued like an old married couple, and when Brian died, Stewie was so heartbroken, he literally rewrote time to save him. There's something beautiful about that level of devotion, even in a cartoon about talking dogs and genius babies. The voice acting in Family Guy is another soothing element worth considering as you drift off. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, essentially having conversations with himself for hours during recording sessions. Imagine the surreal experience of being alone in a sound booth, switching between a baby's British accent, a dog's sophisticated tone, and a grown man's childish outbursts. It's like a one-person theater performance that's been going on for decades. Here's something wonderfully absurd about the show's background characters. Cleveland Brown, Peter's neighbor and friend, was originally just meant to appear in a few episodes, but his calm, measured way of speaking proved so funny when contrasted with Peter's chaos that he became a main character and eventually got his own spin-off show. Sometimes the best things in life happen by accident, which is a nice thought to carry into sleep. Let's explore some of the more obscure Griffin family members, because their stories have a mythical quality perfect for bedtime. There's King Arthur Griffin, an ancestor who could supposedly pull Excalibur from the stone. Then there's Moses Griffin, who led the Jews out of Egypt while complaining about billboards and demanding more Jolly Ranchers. The show creates these elaborate historical figures that exist purely to set up jokes, but there's something wonderfully imaginative about building an entire fictional lineage. The relationship between Stewie and his stuffed bear Rupert is oddly touching when you think about it. This genius baby, capable of building time machines and mind control devices, still needs his security blanket in the form of a simple teddy bear. It reminds us that no matter how complex we become, we all need something soft and familiar to hold on to. That's a comforting thought as you settle into your own bed. Family Guy's approach to cutaway gags creates a unique storytelling rhythm that's almost hypnotic. The show will interrupt itself mid-scene to show us a completely unrelated flashback or fantasy sequence, then seamlessly return to the main story. It's like how our minds work when we're falling asleep, jumping from one random thought to another without any logical connection. Yet somehow, it all flows together. Here's a fascinating detail about Meg Griffin that reveals the show's unexpected complexity. Despite being constantly mistreated by her family, actress Mila Kunis has mentioned in interviews that playing Meg taught her about resilience and finding humor in difficult situations. The character, who seems to exist purely for abuse, actually represents something deeper about perseverance and maintaining hope even when everything seems to go wrong. The show's relationship with censorship has always been playful rather than aggressive. When certain words can't be said on television, the characters find creative ways around it, often making the censored version funnier than the uncensored one would have been. There's something delightfully subversive about finding humor within constraints, like creating art within specific rules. Let me tell you about Brian's literary aspirations, which add a layer of melancholy to his character that's perfect for quiet reflection. He's constantly working on novels that never get published, struggling with alcoholism, and dealing with the existential crisis of being a talking dog in a world that doesn't quite make sense. His failures are deeply human, reminding us that everyone struggles with their dreams and disappointments. The background music in Family Guy deserves more recognition than it gets. The composers create these elaborate orchestral pieces for scenes that last only seconds, treating throwaway gags with the same musical attention as epic movie moments. There's something beautiful about that level of craftsmanship being applied to the most ridiculous situations imaginable. Quagmire's house being right next to the Griffins creates an interesting dynamic that's been running for over 20 years. These neighbors, who are simultaneously friends and enemies, who know each other's secrets but continue to be surprised by each other's actions. It's like a very slow, very weird sitcom relationship that unfolds over decades rather than seasons. The show's treatment of death is uniquely casual and somehow comforting because of it. Characters die and come back regularly. Time gets rewritten, and consequences are often temporary. In a world where permanence can feel overwhelming, there's something soothing about a universe where mistakes can be undone and second chances are always available. Here's something about the show's animation style that contributes to its dreamlike quality. The characters are drawn with simple, clean lines that make them feel both familiar and slightly unreal. Their movements are fluid but exaggerated, creating a world that feels just removed enough from reality to be purely entertaining rather than stressful. The recurring theme of Peter's various jobs throughout the series creates a sense of endless possibility. He's been everything from a bodega owner to a Renaissance artist to a country music star, often within the same season. There's something liberating about a character who can completely reinvent himself whenever the story demands it, suggesting that we all have infinite potential for change. Family Guy's approach to celebrity cameos is uniquely self-aware. When famous people appear on the show, they're often playing exaggerated versions of themselves, or completely different characters entirely. It creates this meta-textual layer where reality and fiction blend together in ways that feel dreamlike and surreal. The show's relationship with its own continuity is fascinatingly relaxed. Characters will reference events from previous episodes as if they happened, then completely contradict those same events in the next episode. It's like how dreams work. Everything makes perfect sense until you try to examine the logic too closely. Let me share something about the show's writing process that might interest you as you drift off. The writer's room for Family Guy is known for being one of the most collaborative in television, with jokes being refined and improved by multiple people before making it to air. Each throwaway line has been polished by a room full of comedy writers, which explains why even the smallest moments often contain multiple layers of humor. The relationship between Lois and Peter represents something uniquely optimistic despite all their problems. No matter how much chaos Peter creates, no matter how frustrated Lois becomes, they always find their way back to each other by the end of each episode. It's a cartoon version of unconditional love that's oddly reassuring. Stewie's gradual evolution from would-be world conqueror to adventure-seeking toddler reflects the show's own maturation over time. Early Stewie was genuinely menacing, plotting elaborate schemes to murder his mother. Modern Stewie is more interested in friendship and exploration. It's like watching a character literally grow up, even though he's technically stayed the same age. The show's use of musical numbers creates these unexpected moments of pure joy in the middle of chaotic episodes. Characters will suddenly break into elaborate song and dance routines that rival professional Broadway productions, then immediately return to the mundane problems of suburban life. These musical interludes feel like shared dreams where anything is possible. Family Guy's approach to social commentary is gentle rather than preachy, which makes it perfect bedtime viewing. The show addresses serious topics through the lens of absurd situations, making complex issues feel manageable rather than overwhelming. It's comedy as comfort food, nourishing without being heavy. The longevity of the show itself is something worth contemplating as you prepare for sleep. Family Guy has been on television for over 2 decades, meaning that some viewers have literally grown up with these characters. There's something deeply comforting about having fictional friends who are always there, always ready to entertain you, no matter what's happening in your real life. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the show's history. When the writers temporarily killed off the beloved character, the fan reaction was so intense that they brought him back within a few episodes. It demonstrated that beneath all the irreverence and chaos, people genuinely care about these animated characters as if they were real friends and family members. The show's treatment of mundane activities, like grocery shopping, going to work, or sitting in traffic, transforms everyday boredom into comedic gold. There's something oddly therapeutic about seeing ordinary frustrations played out in exaggerated cartoon form. It makes your own daily annoyances feel more manageable and even potentially funny. Here's something beautiful about the show's approach to friendship. Peter's relationship with his drinking buddies at the Drunken Clam represents a very specific type of male bonding, sitting around, talking about nothing important, and just enjoying each other's company. In our increasingly connected but somehow isolated world, there's something nostalgic and appealing about that kind of simple, uncomplicated friendship. The show's relationship with its own past creates interesting layers of nostalgia. Characters will reference things that happened in earlier seasons as if they were childhood memories, creating this sense of shared history between the audience and the fictional characters. It's like having old friends who remember the same funny stories you do. As we near the end of our journey through Family Guy facts, consider how the show serves as a kind of modern folklore. These characters and their ridiculous adventures have become part of our shared cultural vocabulary. People quote Peter Griffin the way previous generations might have referenced folk tales or classic literature. In a weird way, the Griffin family has become America's unofficial cartoon family, as recognizable as any real celebrity. The show's ending credits often feature the characters sitting on their couch, watching television just like the audience is doing. It creates this mirror effect, where fiction and reality blend together in a peaceful domestic scene. After all the chaos and adventure of each episode, everyone ends up exactly where they started, at home, together, ready to do it all again tomorrow. And that's perhaps the most comforting thing about Family Guy. No matter how crazy things get, no matter what disasters befall the Griffin family, they always end up back home, safe and sound, ready for the next adventure. It's a universe where problems are temporary, love is permanent, and there's always something to laugh about, even in the strangest situations. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, take comfort in knowing that somewhere in the animated town of Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into some ridiculous situation that will somehow work out just fine by morning. Sweet dreams. And remember, no matter how weird your own dreams get tonight, they probably won't be any stranger than a typical Family Guy episode. Sleep well, knowing that laughter truly is the best medicine. Even in cartoon form, the Griffin family will be there tomorrow, ready to entertain you with more wonderfully weird adventures whenever you need them. Good night. Picture this. You're lying in bed, eyes heavy, ready to drift off into dreamland. But instead of counting sheep, what if I told you some absolutely wild facts about one of television's most chaotic families? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes disturbing world of Family Guy, with facts so strange, they might just lull you into the most entertaining sleep of your life. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through Quahog that's perfect for your bedtime routine. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just need something to occupy your mind as you wind down, these Family Guy facts will give you plenty to think about as you drift off to sleep. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's creation. Family Guy almost never made it to air in the first place. Seth MacFarlane created the pilot when he was just 24 years old, working as a writer and animator for Hanna-Barbera. The original pilot was so different from what we know today that it's almost unrecognizable. Brian wasn't even supposed to be the sophisticated martini-drinking intellectual we know and love. Originally, he was just going to be a regular dog who occasionally spoke. But MacFarlane decided that having a talking dog who acted completely normal would be funnier than having one who was still essentially just a pet. Speaking of Brian, here's a fact that might keep you thinking as you fall asleep. Brian Griffin is technically immortal in some episodes, but ages normally in others. The show has never been consistent about whether Brian ages like a regular dog or if he's somehow exempt from typical canine lifespans. In some episodes, he's mentioned to be around 7 years old in dog years, which would make him middle-aged. But in others, he references events from decades ago, as if he experienced them personally. This inconsistency is just one of many things that make Family Guy's continuity so fascinatingly chaotic. Now, let's talk about Stewie Griffin, the baby genius with questionable intentions. Did you know that Stewie's sexuality has been a subject of debate not just among fans but actually within the show's writing room? Seth MacFarlane has stated in interviews that Stewie is meant to be gay, but the character's sexuality has been portrayed inconsistently throughout the series. In early episodes, Stewie had crushes on various female characters, but later seasons have shown him with clear attractions to male characters. The writers have deliberately kept this ambiguous, which adds another layer to Stewie's already complex character. Here's something that might give you pleasant dreams. The voice actors for Family Guy are incredibly talented beyond just their work on the show. Seth MacFarlane, who voices Peter, Brian, and Stewie, is also an accomplished singer who has released several jazz albums. His singing voice is so good that he's performed with major orchestras and has even done tribute concerts to classic crooners like Frank Sinatra. Imagine Peter Griffin serenading you to sleep with smooth jazz standards. Let's dive into some facts about the show's most controversial character, Peter Griffin himself. Peter's weight has been a running gag throughout the series. But did you know that his exact weight has been mentioned multiple times with wildly different numbers? In some episodes, he's said to weigh around 270 pounds, while in others, the number jumps to over 300. The inconsistency is intentional, reflecting how the show treats Peter's physical characteristics as fluid depending on what's funniest for any given episode. Peter's job history is another source of endless entertainment and confusion. Throughout the series, he's worked at a toy factory, a brewery, various other random jobs, and has even been unemployed for extended periods. But here's what's interesting. The show never explains how the Griffin family maintains their lifestyle during Peter's unemployed periods. They live in a decent house in what appears to be a middle-class neighborhood, yet Peter's employment status seems to have no impact on their standard of living. It's one of those cartoon logic elements that you just have to accept. Speaking of the Griffin house, have you ever noticed that the layout seems to change between episodes? Sometimes there are rooms that appear out of nowhere, and other times, familiar rooms seem to vanish. The basement, in particular, seems to change size and purpose depending on the episode's needs. In some episodes, it's a small storage space, while in others, it's large enough to hold elaborate contraptions or even entire gatherings. This kind of flexible architecture is common in animated shows, but Family Guy takes it to particularly absurd lengths. Let's talk about Meg Griffin, the family's perpetual punching bag. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Meg was originally supposed to be the most normal character in the family, serving as the audience's point of view into this chaotic household. But as the show evolved, the writers found it funnier to make her the target of everyone's abuse. This shift happened gradually over the first few seasons, and by the time it was fully established, Meg had transformed from a relatable teenager into a character whose suffering was played for laughs. The voice of Meg has also changed throughout the series. Originally voiced by Lacey Chabert, the role was taken over by Mila Kunis starting in Season 2. The transition was so seamless that many viewers didn't even notice the change. Kunis was actually still a teenager when she started voicing Meg, making her closer in age to the character than most voice actors are to their animated counterparts. Here's a soothing fact about the show's animation style. Family Guy uses a technique called cutaway gags that allows for infinite creative possibilities. These brief segments, usually introduced by phrases like, "This is worse than the time," allow the animators to create completely different scenarios, time periods, and art styles within a single episode. Some of these cutaways reference obscure pop culture moments, while others create entirely fictional scenarios. The animators have said that creating these cutaways is one of the most enjoyable parts of working on the show because there are virtually no limitations on what they can create. Let's discuss some facts about Quahog, the fictional Rhode Island town where the Griffins live. The town's name is actually a type of clam, which is fitting given Rhode Island's coastal location. But here's what's interesting. The geography of Quahog seems to change depending on the episode's needs. Sometimes it's portrayed as a small town where everyone knows each other, while other times it seems large enough to support multiple shopping districts, airports, and major venues. The town has everything from a small town feel to big city amenities, depending on what the plot requires. The Drunken Clam, the bar where Peter and his friends hang out, is based on real bars that McFarlane frequented during his college years. The atmosphere and the type of conversations that happen there are drawn from McFarlane's actual experiences, which explains why the dialogue often feels so authentic despite the absurd situations. Here's something that might help you drift off. The show's theme song is intentionally designed to be catchy and memorable, but it's also shorter than most television theme songs. This was a deliberate choice to maximize the amount of time available for actual content in each episode. The brevity of the theme song allows for more jokes and story development, which is part of why Family Guy episodes often feel packed with content. Let's talk about some of the show's recurring characters and their origins. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffins' oversexed neighbor, was originally conceived as a minor character who would appear occasionally, but the writers found his character so entertaining that he became a regular part of the cast. His distinctive laugh and catchphrase, "giggity," weren't in the original character design, but developed naturally as the voice actor, Seth MacFarlane, experimented with the character's vocal patterns. Cleveland Brown, Peter's friend who eventually got his own spin-off show, was originally going to be a very different character. The writers initially conceived him as being more similar to Peter in personality, but they decided it would be funnier to make him the calm, rational member of the group. This decision led to Cleveland becoming the voice of reason among Peter's friends, often serving as a counterbalance to their more outrageous behavior. Joe Swanson, the paraplegic police officer, was created to add diversity to the show's cast, but the writers were careful to make his disability just one aspect of his character rather than his defining trait. In many episodes, Joe is the most competent and heroic character, often solving problems that the other characters can't handle. His wheelchair is rarely portrayed as a limitation, and he's often shown doing things that would be impossible for anyone, disabled or not. Here's a relaxing fact about the show's production schedule. Family Guy episodes are typically produced months in advance, which allows the animators and voice actors to take their time perfecting each episode. Unlike live-action shows that have to rush to meet weekly deadlines, animated shows like Family Guy can spend weeks on individual scenes, ensuring that every joke lands and every visual gag is perfectly timed. The show's writers' room operates on a collaborative system where anyone can contribute ideas, regardless of their official role on the show. This has led to some of the show's most memorable moments coming from unexpected sources. Sometimes the person responsible for continuity might suggest a joke that becomes central to an episode, or a voice actor might improvise a line that becomes a recurring catchphrase. Let's discuss some facts about the show's cultural impact that might give you something peaceful to think about as you fall asleep. Family Guy has been translated into dozens of languages, and each version faces the challenge of adapting American cultural references for international audiences. Some jokes that work perfectly in English become completely different jokes in other languages, while others are replaced entirely with references that local audiences will understand. The show's influence on internet culture has been enormous. Many of Family Guy's cutaway gags and memorable quotes have become memes that spread far beyond the show's original audience. The phrase, "Oh no," in Peter's distinctive voice, for example, became a popular reaction GIF used in contexts that have nothing to do with the show itself. Here's something interesting about the show's approach to celebrity guest stars. Unlike many animated shows that cast celebrities to voice characters similar to themselves, Family Guy often has famous people voice characters that are completely different from their real personalities. This approach has led to some surprising and entertaining performances that showcase different sides of well-known actors and musicians. The show's approach to continuity is deliberately inconsistent, which actually makes it more relaxing to watch in some ways. You don't need to remember every detail from previous episodes to understand what's happening, because the show often contradicts its own established facts for the sake of a good joke. This means you can watch episodes in any order and still enjoy them fully, which is perfect for casual viewing or when you're trying to wind down. Let's talk about some facts about the show's music and sound design. Family Guy employs a full orchestra for many of its musical numbers, which is unusual for an animated television series. This attention to musical detail means that even throwaway songs and cutaway gags are often surprisingly well-produced and catchy. The show's composers have backgrounds in both television and theatrical music, which explains why many of the musical segments feel like they could work on stage. The sound effects in Family Guy are often created in unusual ways. The iconic sound of Peter falling down and hurting himself, which happens in almost every episode, is actually a combination of several different sounds layered together. The voice actors often provide their own sound effects during recording sessions, which gives the show a more organic feel than if all the sounds were added in post-production. Here's a fact that might help you smile as you drift off. The show's animators often hide small details in backgrounds that only the most observant viewers will notice. These Easter eggs can be anything from references to other shows, inside jokes among the production staff, or even tiny animations that have nothing to do with the main story. Finding these hidden details has become a hobby for some fans, who watch episodes multiple times just to catch things they missed. The show's approach to time and aging is fascinatingly inconsistent. While the characters never seem to get older, the show acknowledges the passage of time in other ways. Technology updates, cultural references change, and real-world events are incorporated into episodes. This creates a strange temporal bubble where the characters exist in a perpetual present that somehow includes decades of cultural history. Let's discuss some production facts that showcase the incredible amount of work that goes into each episode. A single episode of Family Guy requires thousands of individual drawings, even though much of the animation is now done digitally. Each character expression, each background element, and each special effect needs to be designed and animated individually. The attention to detail is remarkable when you consider how quickly episodes need to be produced. The voice recording process is also more complex than you might expect. While Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, he rarely records them in conversation with each other during the same session. Instead, each character's lines are recorded separately, and the conversations are constructed in post-production. This means that MacFarlane has to imagine how his different characters would interact with each other and adjust his performance accordingly. Here's something soothing to consider. Despite all the chaos and controversy surrounding Family Guy, the show has created jobs for hundreds of people over its many seasons. Animators, voice actors, writers, musicians, sound engineers, and countless other professionals have built careers working on this show. In a way, all of this absurd humor has created a small community of creative people who work together to bring these ridiculous stories to life. The show's international success has also led to cultural exchange in unexpected ways. American animators have learned techniques from international studios, while animators from other countries have brought their own cultural perspectives to American television. This cross-pollination of ideas has enriched the medium of animation as a whole. As we near the end of our journey through these Family Guy facts, let's consider something that might give you pleasant dreams. The show's enduring popularity suggests that there's something universally appealing about stories of dysfunctional families who, despite all their problems, somehow stick together. Even though the Griffin family is exaggerated to absurd proportions, there's something recognizable about their dynamics that resonates with audiences around the world. The show's ability to find humor in everyday situations, even when those situations are taken to impossible extremes, reflects a fundamentally optimistic view of life. No matter how bad things get, there's always something to laugh about. This perspective can be oddly comforting when you're trying to wind down from your own day's challenges. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, you can think about this wild, wonderful, and completely unpredictable animated world where anything can happen, where the impossible is routine, and where laughter is always just around the corner. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be as peaceful as a Quahog evening, minus all the explosions and chaos, of course. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who's just discovered these bizarre facts, I hope this journey through Family Guy's strange universe has given you something entertaining to think about as you fall asleep. Remember, in the world of animation, anything is possible, and tomorrow is just another opportunity for new adventures and unexpected laughs.